High in the Himalayas, there is a nation where the highest laws of the land mandate that more than half of the country remain covered in deep, ancient forests for all time. Here, progress is measured not by what is endlessly consumed, but by what is fiercely protected. Imagine stepping out into the sharp, crisp air of the Paro Valley just after dawn. The earthy scent of pine needles mixes with the sweet smoke of burning juniper. The morning mist clings to the terraced rice fields, moving slowly through the mountains like a living thing. If you listen closely, beneath the sound of the cold river rushing through the valley floor, you can hear a low, rhythmic creaking. It is a massive wooden prayer wheel, polished smooth by generations of hands, being spun by an elderly woman with deep lines of laughter etched around her eyes. She murmurs softly to herself, her steps deliberate and unhurried. Around her, the town is waking up. People are stepping out into the cool morning, but there is no frantic rush, no blaring horns of rush hour traffic, no tension in the shoulders. Men pause to adjust the heavy folds of their woven robes, while women neatly pin their ankle-length fabrics. They are heading to work, to school, to the market. But the pace is entirely different. It feels intentional. It feels like a society that has somehow remembered how to breathe. Today, we are walking into the kingdom of Bhutan, to experience a philosophy of living that much of the world has almost entirely forgotten. Welcome to Culture Journey. Tucked away between the massive geopolitical giants of India and China, perched on the edge of the world's highest and most unforgiving mountain range, lies Bhutan. For centuries, this small kingdom was shielded from the outside world by its formidable geography of jagged peaks and plunging, isolated valleys. But Bhutan's isolation wasn't merely an accident of nature. It was a careful, deliberate choice to protect a fragile and profoundly beautiful way of life. To the people who call these high valleys home, their culture is not a relic to be displayed behind glass in a museum, nor is it a performance put on for visiting outsiders. It is the very soil from which they grow. It dictates how they build their homes, how they treat the rivers, and most importantly, how they define a successful human life. In a globalized era that constantly pushes us to move faster, produce more, and consume endlessly, Bhutan has chosen to walk a completely different path. This isn't just a picturesque travel destination. It is a living, breathing question directed at all of us. What does it actually mean to be a wealthy society? Let's walk through these valleys together and see what we might learn. If you were standing here on the sloping streets of Thimphu, the capital city, what would you notice first? It might actually be what is missing. There are no towering glass skyscrapers reflecting the sun, cutting you off from the sky. There are no glaring digital billboards trying to sell you things you don't need. In fact, there isn't even a single traffic light in the entire country. Instead, at a major intersection, a police officer stands in a beautifully decorated, hand-painted wooden booth, directing the flow of cars with graceful, almost dance-like hand movements. Every building around you, even the newest gas station or corner grocery store, features traditional Bhutanese architecture. You would see gracefully sloped roofs, intricately carved wooden window frames, painted with vibrant motifs of lotus flowers and mythical clouds, and thick walls made of rammed earth or stone. This visual harmony isn't a coincidence, nor is it purely aesthetic. It is deeply tied to a sense of national identity and belonging. In the late 20th century, Bhutan made a conscious decision that modernization should not mean looking exactly like everywhere else. Look closely at the people passing by. The way they dress is striking, immediately rooting them to this specific place on Earth. The men wear the go, a knee-length, heavily woven robe tied securely at the waist, forming a large pouch at the front. Historically, this pouch carried everything from wooden bowls to daggers. Today, it is more likely to hold a smartphone and a wallet. The women wear the kira, a long, beautifully patterned rectangular piece of cloth wrapped and folded elegantly around the body, fastened at the shoulders with silver brooches. Did you know this traditional dress is required during working hours and in all public and government spaces? To a Western observer, it might initially seem strict, but when you spend time speaking to the locals, you begin to understand that it serves a deliberate purpose. It is a powerful tool for cultural preservation. By wearing these garments, from the local shopkeeper to the highest government minister, They are actively weaving their shared heritage into the fabric of modern life, ensuring their unique identity isn't swallowed by globalization. It is a daily physical reminder of who they are and where they come from. As we leave the city behind and drive up into the winding, dizzying mountain passes, the air grows thinner and the forests grow impossibly dense. The Himalayan landscape here is untouched in a way that feels vast, humbling, and almost sacred. And to the Bhutanese, it absolutely is. In much of the modern world, nature is primarily viewed as a resource, something to be conquered, harvested, extracted, or managed for human benefit. But here, the mountains, rivers, and forests are viewed as living, breathing entities, inhabited by ancient deities and local spirits. You do not climb the highest snow-capped peaks in Bhutan. They remain unclimbed, not because they are impossible to scale, but because they are the abodes of the gods. They must be left in peace, untouched by human ambition. This deep spiritual reverence has translated into some of the most profound and forward-thinking environmental laws on Earth. Bhutan isn't just carbon neutral. It is actually carbon negative, naturally absorbing millions of tons more greenhouse gases than it emits. The respect for the Earth is woven into their daily lives. If you were to walk through the sweeping marshy plains of the Phobjika Valley in the dead of winter, you might witness something incredibly moving. This valley is the winter home of the rare and endangered black-necked cranes that migrate over the Himalayas from Tibet. When the magnificent birds arrive, they are known to circle the ancient Gangte Monastery 3 times before finally landing, a majestic gesture the locals view as a sign of deep spiritual respect. To protect the habitat of these revered birds, the human residents of the valley voluntarily lived without grid electricity for years. They feared that overhead power lines would injure the cranes in flight. They waited patiently until the government could afford to install a complex underground cable system. This is the very heart of the Bhutanese worldview. Humanity is not at the center of the universe. We are merely a part of the grand, interconnected web of life, and we must tread lightly. It is impossible to walk through these quiet villages or sit by a local hearth without feeling a sense of deep, quiet contentment. This brings us to the most famous, and perhaps the most deeply misunderstood concept to ever emerge from Bhutan: gross national happiness. It is easy to hear that phrase and imagine a whimsical utopian society where everyone is smiling all the time, where suffering doesn't exist, and where life is perfectly easy. But that isn't what gross national happiness is about. The concept was born in the 1970s, when the 4th king of Bhutan famously declared that gross national happiness is more important than gross domestic product. But what does that actually look like when you live here? It means that before a new highway is carved into a mountain or a global trade agreement is signed, leaders must pause and ask a fundamental question. Will this make us richer, but destroy a sacred river? Will it bring global trade, but tear apart the quiet social fabric of our villages? If the answer is yes, the project simply stops. Gross national happiness recognizes a fundamental truth that many advanced economies are only just beginning to realize. While material wealth is necessary to alleviate physical suffering, it is entirely insufficient for human fulfillment. True, enduring well-being requires psychological health, time spent with loved ones, spiritual vitality, and a clean environment. In Bhutan, basic healthcare and education are provided free of charge to all citizens. But just as importantly, time is valued. There is a deeply ingrained cultural expectation that you care for your aging parents in your home, that you participate in lengthy, vibrant community festivals, and that you leave space in your day for stillness and reflection. Perhaps most surprisingly, a core pillar of their psychological well-being is their relationship with impermanence. In Bhutanese Buddhist philosophy, there is a deep cultural acceptance of impermanence. Rather than hiding from the reality of our temporary existence, they look it straight in the eye. You see it in the thousands of white prayer flags fluttering in the wind, placed to guide the spirits of the departed. By accepting that everything ends, they are not driven to despair. Instead, they are driven to appreciate the absolute preciousness of the present moment. They do not waste time chasing things that do not matter. It is a society that has institutionalized the idea that mental clarity and emotional peace are just as critical as a paycheck. But we must be incredibly careful not to romanticize Bhutan as a magical kingdom frozen in time, isolated from the realities of the modern era. They are not hiding from the world. Television and the internet were only introduced here in 1999, making it one of the very last countries on Earth to adopt them. Today, young Bhutanese are as technologically connected as anyone else. They watch international cinema, follow global fashion trends, and navigate the endless complexities of social media on their smartphones. The profound challenge they face right now, the quiet tension you can feel if you sit in the modern coffee shops of Thimphu, is how to embrace the future without losing their soul. Young people sometimes struggle to find fulfilling jobs in the traditional economy, leading to an increase in rural to urban migration. There is a very real, very human push and pull between the slow, deliberate pace of their ancestors and the hyper-connected, anxious rush of the outside world that is now available at their fingertips. Yet, what makes Bhutan so extraordinary is their deliberate, thoughtful approach to this inevitable change. They are not throwing their doors wide open to unfiltered, rampant globalization. They are choosing, carefully, what to let in. They are actively trying to prove that you can be a fully participating member of the 21st century without sacrificing the ancient wisdom, the respect for nature, and the deep community bonds that keep a society grounded. When we look closely at Bhutan, we are really looking at a mirror held up to the rest of the world. Their way of life asks us to pause and deeply examine our own definitions of progress, success, and meaning. At its absolute core, the Bhutanese philosophy is about connection. It is about the profound realization that we are intrinsically tied to our physical environment, deeply rooted in our heritage, and most importantly, responsible for one another. In a modern global era that often leaves people feeling isolated, anxious, and exhausted despite our endless technological conveniences, Bhutan offers a quiet, powerful reminder of what actually sustains the human spirit. It teaches us that continuity matters. Knowing exactly where you come from gives you the unshakable strength to face where you are going. Tradition isn't about being stubbornly trapped in the past. It is about carrying the warmth of the fire forward into the cold of the unknown. The lesson of this Himalayan kingdom is not that we should all wear traditional woven robes, abandon our cities, or retreat to the mountains. The lesson is that we have the agency to choose what we value. We can choose to measure our short lives not by the endless accumulation of things, but by the depth of our peace, the health of our surroundings, and the strength of our communities. Thank you for walking through the high valleys of Bhutan with us today. If this journey brought you a moment of peace, consider subscribing to join our growing community of curious minds. We travel not just to see new places, but to understand the people who call them home. Tell me in the comments, what part of Bhutan's philosophy do you wish you could bring into your own life? Until next time, step lightly and keep exploring.